welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Our guest today is Drew Reilly. Drew started in the door-to-door space specifically for the purpose of earning cash so that he could buy more real estate, which is cool. Now, he's acquired over $25 million of real estate over the past decade. He started with house hacking, a duplex, purchased a triplex, fourplex, condo building, townhomes, even a 40-acre ranch luxury Airbnb. He's done flips, new construction, even bought an old motel to build out an 85-unit condotel project. So he's definitely had his hands in a variety of things, which I'm excited to dig into some of these. But how you doing, Drew? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Man, that's quite the resume. It sounds like you've had your hands in so many different aspects of real estate. Was that kind of intentional, or you just like curious and just kept exploring different routes, or kind of break that down for us?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I thought I was going to be like the, college student duplex guy, student housing, find houses and fill them up with students and maximize the rooms. But, I was never impartial to the deal. I mean, I spent a lot of time doing due diligence. I looked at every type of asset class. I broke down all sorts of pro formas, and really, my philosophy has always kind of been just buy the deal. Don't, kind of limit yourself to one class or one type of property. So it wasn't intentional. It was just, hey man, a fourplex came up for sale. It's a great deal, or it's the best one at the time. And so I did it, or a condo project or a Airbnb. It's just, at the time, what was the best deal, and it just kind of happened to all be different, which has been cool.
Yeah, I love that. I think people sometimes get caught up in like, oh, I want to do multifamily, or I want to own an apartment, or I want to do an Airbnb, and it's like I said, just do what makes most sense for you in that area, according to your capital or return. Like, just do what makes most sense and the best deal you can find. Like, I'm more partial to just making the money off of it than I am, this special, unique thing. But sometimes it can be fun to kind of gamify it and like try different stuff. But that's cool. So the first one you did was just kind of a primary residence house hack. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was in college. I was paying rent, getting married, and I kind of learned about FHA loans and low down payments. And so, I was about to get married, and I was like, well, I'm going to go from paying $400 a month to $1,000. And it's like, hey, if I can pick up a duplex for $200,000 and live in the basement, I can rent the upstairs for free. And so, the math was like, all right, what's 3.5% of 200? I need $7,000, and I didn't have it, so I went out, sold, did some door to door, made some money, and then bought the house. And it's kind of been one of my better ones because the price was so cheap, but it was really that simple.
Yeah, man, I love that beginning. Like, I think it's such a soft, easy way to start. And like I said, it's not that complicated. It's like you buy something. Now, obviously, markets shift and they go through ups and downs and stuff, but that's the cool thing when you're putting very little in. Your return can be pretty good. And when it's a house hack, even if it doesn't really cash flow, if you're not like making money off it, even if it just subsidizes, like you said, what you would have been throwing away in rent, it's a win. So it can be really forgiving place to start.
Yeah. And so people it's opportunity cost, right? It's like, well, I might not be making hundreds of dollars a month, but I'm not paying the $1,200 I would have been in rent. So essentially I am saving $1,000 a month. That's $12,000. And so, the ROIs on low down payments is just crazy when you look at it from that perspective, when you factor in your opportunity cost. So I think people discredit that too often.
Yeah, when it's so cool, like say when you're able to put 7 down, or what today would probably be like 14,000 or whatever, like that's so much less than putting down 25, 30, 40, 60,000, whatever it would be now. You'd be 60, 70,000 if you put 25% down on something like that. But now you can do it for 14, 5, 10, whatever the unit is. It's like everybody should be doing house hacks as much as they can if they want to build their portfolio.
To start, yes. I mean, that's kind of my advice I help people with is, hey, buy a house every year, lowest down payment possible. If you can get into conventional, do 5, just the lowest possible. Buy, single family home at the median, one that you can move out, rent, and at least break even on. And then if you can make extra money, if you can stack cash, then try and pick up a investment property, putting 25% down or 15 down. But, if you only did 5% down every single year, in 10, 15 years, you'd have millions of dollars of assets.
Yeah, with such little invested in.
Yes.
I love your start, man. Like you it sounds like it's just so very thought out. Like, okay, here's the thing. This is what I want to do. I'll go get this job where I make this so I can go put it to use. I feel like a lot of people it's the opposite. Like they get excited about real estate, but they're looking for all these tricks to do, like no money down or this or that, and then they get depressed and never buy. Or people go into sales, start making a lot of money, and they just get distracted making money and making money
Yeah.
and as opposed to investing it, and you kind of like married the two before anything had even started.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, to me, I wanted to do real estate. I had, some of the most wealthy people in my extended family were in that game. And so I studied in college and I was like, all right, this is something I want to do. And then, the problem is most of my friends were in school, either studying finance or studying real estate, and they were going to go be analysts or going to work for people. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, I was like, well, I don't want to manage other people's money. Like, I want to own the asset. Like, I want to be wealthy. Like, I want to be on the beach collecting checks, right? So, how do I acquire these assets? It's like, I need some cash, man. Where can I get cash, large sums of it, fast? And it's like, well, door to door sales, these guys make cash. So I was like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to do this to be here for 10 years or 20 years or to knock doors. It's like, hey, I'm going to do this to make some cash. I'm going to stack it. I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to build it up. And when the back end check comes, like, I'm going to go to zero, man. So for 7 straight years, and even to this day, man, if I go to zero multiple times a year, when there's large sums in there, it's write it, buy something, invest, and just go to zero. That was kind of my philosophy.
Dude, I love that. Go to zero. Like it's such a cool concept because the money isn't gone, and that's
Yeah.
the with real estate that's so different. If you go to zero on buying toys or traveling or this or that, it's like that's cool, but the money's just gone. Any penny I put in real estate, like it's just sitting there in this savings account called a asset
Yeah.
that I can pull out if I sell or whatever, refinance. The money's not gone, and that's why it's not scary. I'm pretty thrifty,
Yeah.
and I don't like to buy a bunch of junk. But man, with real estate, I'm just like, right, I'm happy to write the check. Like,
Sure.
as if there's money in the account, like let's spend it. But if it's for something else, I'm like, I don't know. I'll call around. And like, it's just like I try to resist it. But the money's not gone when it's in real estate.
No, and not to get too deep, but it being, for 7 or 8 years we built like that and acquired assets, and like I'm a lifestyle guy. Like for me, it was obviously build up the passive income and then use the income to buy assets. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I drive nice cars, I have toys, I have razors and Sea-Doos and Porsche and all sorts of stuff, but it was always buy it with passive income, and
Yeah.
don't adjust your lifestyle not based upon your active income and what's in your account, but you can truly adjust your lifestyle off of your passive or residual income. And it's just so ironic where this past year, actually, I kind of got in a situation where my wife and I decided to really like take the year off. I mean, I didn't really earn actively, and it was so nice
Mm-hmm.
just to be able to like take the year off and just enjoy our family and just come together. And it was a pivotal year for us where I missed out on a bunch of earnings as far as the active go, but I was fully
Sure.
able to sustain and just live and do what I needed to do because the passive was there. And I think a lot of folks get in a situation where they should take time off. They
Yeah.
grow families, they grow apart, and until you get to the point of no return with your wife or your kids, it's like, man, if you would have just stopped and pumped the brakes and lived for 6 or 8 months, like you'd solve a lot of your problems.
Yeah, dude, I think that's so powerful, and that's the cool thing. People talk a lot about the freedom of real estate, and yeah, a lot of times it's like you mentioned, like, oh, I want to collect checks while I'm at the beach. I want to do what I want. I want to go play, and it's like, yeah, that part's cool. Like we all
Yeah.
like that part. There's no one that's not gonna like that. But man, you hit like, what if there's like real heavy stuff? What if there's real things? When you need to like, like say deepen your relationships and go do self work. Like what, like some more heavy stuff that's not necessarily as fun.
Yeah.
But man, the freedom to do that too, like that's where you're really grateful for the freedom, and you see so many people in a tight spot and then they can't get out of that spot because they're shackled to it
Yeah.
by that active income, and then things just like get worse and worse. So I think that's a really powerful concept.
Thank you. Yeah.
What's up, guys? It's Brody Fawcett. Hey, I just want to jump on here really quick and say thank you for tuning in and listening to the show week after week. It means so much to us. Real quick, if you are getting value out of this, please go ahead and leave us a review, and feel free to share this with anyone who else you think might receive some value. And if you feel like you could benefit from working with us directly through a one-on-one coach like Joe, or through our trainings and online program, head on over to realestateinvestingschool.com, where you can schedule a free one-on-one strategy call and dive in to see if Real Estate Investing School will add some value for you.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's dope, man. So how long was it before you were able to start? Because people talk about, buy your toys, with your cash flow, right? Because
Yeah.
that's all backed by assets. It takes a while to kind of build that much cash flow up, right? You'll spend some pretty good money. You're like, oh, I'm getting $400 here, $200 here, maybe $1,000 cash flow here. It's like that takes a while to start paying the bills for the kind of toys you're mentioning. How far into the real estate game were you before you were able to really start using that money to for the lifestyle, as opposed to just kind of getting by, or did you just kind of do it as you went, or what was your scenario?
Yeah. Probably 4 or 5 years. And it's, you stack your chips, right? $500 here, $1,000 here, $1,200 cash flow here, and you get to the point where you have maybe 5, 10,000 coming in, and then you know keep your mortgage, obviously, um, pretty basic, right? But also, like, even you know like a couple years ago, I bought this crazy car, and it's one that I've always wanted. It's this Porsche GT3 RS, and I was like, man, this is a freaking sick car. But at the time, like, I could finance the thing for 2.5%, and so
Yeah.
it's like, well, I have $200,000 here. I can buy this car, or I can take the 200 grand. I can go buy $1 million worth of assets. Those
Yeah.
$1 million worth of assets are going to print out cash. 1,500, $2,000 a month. I can finance this car at 2.5% for only $1,800 a month. And so it's like, well, I'm not going to pay cash for this. That'd be stupid.
Yep.
I have a fixed rate here. I have a fixed rate there. And so, to your point, it's like, well, my 200 grand in this vehicle might only be worth 150 in a couple of years, whereas in $1 million of assets, it's secured, it's growing, and I don't just get appreciation on the $200 investment. I get 5 to 10% growth on the $1 million asset. It's like
Yes.
over 5 years, it's like that one decision, the difference could be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, man, I love that. I think a lot of us came from a world, where it's like, if you can't buy it in cash, don't buy it. That's what responsible people do.
Yeah.
But like I said, once you understand real estate and how to leverage debt safely, it's like it's a whole different ball game. And like I said, it's so much wiser, because leveraging the debt, like I say, you get the appreciation on the $1 million asset, not the 200,000 in cash, and
Yes.
putting that into real estate that grows, as opposed to buying the toy that's just going to depreciate the majority of the time. Cars have recently actually been going up, which is like a nice little bonus,
I know,
but
it's crazy. Yeah.
it's like, all right. But yeah, that's freaking awesome. I love that concept. And really, when people understand that, if that's all anybody really got with real estate, is starting to understand the few things we've mentioned the first 10 minutes of this podcast, you know, that's life changing. And for a lot of people, they hear real estate's good, but they don't really know why. And a few of these points you've already touched on is like, those are these big, powerful, wealth building, life changing stuff that it sounds like you had people in your family, in your circle growing up, that you kind of saw that, and that's what attracted you to it. Is that right?
Yeah, but I didn't know anything about it. Growing up, it was very, blue collar family, and into sports a lot. And, my grandpa ran a company. My dad, my uncles all worked there. And, and I always was an entrepreneurial kind of mind, selling stuff on eBay or flipping cars. Like, I always, made money, right? But
Hmm.
when I got into the real estate space, like, everything for me has kind of been self-taught. Like, yeah, I didn't have this investing school when I was in college, right? Like, house hacking in 2012, it wasn't a term, man. Like, people weren't talking
Yep.
about it. It wasn't big on the internet. Like, now, if you just open your Instagram, you guys and Pace Morby and Ryan Pineda, it's like, dude, there's 50 people talking about these
Yeah.
type of deals. Back then, it didn't happen. So, like, I remember specifically I went to like my college professor who was teaching us about, you know, heavy real estate due diligence, how to break down pro formas, and analyze commercial real estate. And I go to him and I'm like, hey man, I'm getting married next month. I want to buy this house for 200 grand. It's going to cost me 7. I live in the basement, rent the top. Should I do it? And he's like, I don't know. Sounds kind of risky. And I'm like, nobody I know is doing this, man. Like, where am I getting the advice from? You know what I mean? Like, my own
Yeah.
professor's like telling me not to do this. He's not even doing this stuff. And so I kind of had to step into the dark on a lot of things. But when you really can understand the numbers and the finances, and you know, you need people to push you, or sometimes you have to push yourself. Like, it's a lot of these things that I've done. It's like I don't assume risk, man. There is no risk, and it's even riskier because no one is even telling me to do it. I've had to really
Mm-hmm.
step in the dark on a lot of things. So
Dude, I love that concept though. Like you said, it's like it's not risky if you understand the principles, the
yes,
foundational principles behind it. It's like if it felt weird because no one's telling you to do it, but when you sit down and you're like, wait, I know how to look at this. You're looking at the numbers, you understand these principles, and you're like, this isn't risky. This is smart. Like it's a no brainer. Like, what am I missing? Why is everybody not telling me to do this? Why are they not shouting from the rooftops?
yeah. Well, you guys
And
are, which is freaking awesome, man.
yeah, and then now it is, which is cool, And one thing I do a lot of times with my students, like, we've been wrapping up the first year of the school. It's December when we're recording this podcast, so it's the last month of the first year of the school, and I've kind of been doing like a recap with a bunch of students lately, and it's just been like, hey, like, do you know how to think like an investor now? Like, do you understand these principles so that you can take that and look at any situation and see the different, angles and variables to be able to like kind of make a good decision? And
Yeah,
that's what you were saying you learned to do kind of just on your own through different outside stuff, even from real estate, but then kind of applying it all there. Is like, oh, if you can learn to think like an investor and view it through those eyes, then you can do anything from a primary residence all the way to an 85 unit condotel because it's the same principles, just with deeper due diligence.
yeah. And so a cool story on that. So like 2 years ago, I had been buying stuff, and in Utah, stuff went crazy, right? Like
Yeah.
it was hard to cash flow, not just because the rates were high, but because the prices were high. And so you
Hmm.
know, I had done a lot of new construction builds and made a lot of money there, and I thought, Airbnb's doing good and whatever. But so like in 2020, 2 years ago, I have this place in Heber that Airbnb's like really well, and I started to see like kind of the micro trends going there. There's a new ski resort, the town's growing like crazy, Red Ledges, Victory Ranch, and long story short, like I was buying these townhouses from Edge, brand new, and I was paying like 350 grand for them, and closing them. They're worth 450, but I'm only making like a couple $100 of cash flow. And
Yeah.
I start looking like, dude, where are the deals at, man? And I stumble upon this old ghetto shitty motel in Heber, right on Main Street. It's 16 rooms. The guy's got no financials. Half of them are vacant. It's meth everywhere. And I'm looking at this deal and I'm saying, well, everybody's passing on this deal because it's shitty, it's old,
Yeah.
and but the thing is like the people that are passing on it, the cap rate sucks. There's no cash flow. It's whatever. It doesn't matter what the deal is doing. What matters is what the deal should be doing. And so I look at it and I say, man, for $5,000 of remodel here, like I can easily rent these rooms on Airbnb for 15 to 1,800 bucks a month. And so I end up picking up this motel for $1 million. It's 16 rooms, and I'm in the plan to tear it down. But the past 2 years, it's like that asset for $60,000 a door. I've been renting for 16 to 1,800 bucks a month, and
Jeez.
the same doors I was buying for $350,000, I was only renting for 2,200 bucks a month. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, yeah, this is a motel where I bought it. It doesn't matter what I couldn't even finance it. I had to pay cash. No bank
Yeah, I
would
was
hold
gonna
it.
ask you how you funded it, so you
Yeah.
just had to do it in cash because it was just a mess.
Yeah, I partnered with my brother, but no one would touch this thing because there is no finances, there's no taxes paid, and so it's just hey. But I know what the market is. I know what people will pay. I know what's my price per door, and that's one of the best performing assets that I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's dive into that a little more. So you buy this mess. Do you remember how much you got it for?
We paid $1 million, maybe one. It was like $1,050,000 or something.
Okay, so just over 1 million to buy this, and it's currently like, is any of it being rented or
Yeah.
functional? Just kind of okay, so it's just kind of like this C class, maybe D class, but it's
Oh,
being rented.
yeah. But we did soup it up. Like we did a quick and dirty LVP white paint, 70-inch TVs, fiber
Nice.
internet. Like maybe $5,000 a room. I think we maybe spent 60, 70 grand quickly to get the place up and operational. So let's say we're in it 1-1.
So you're able to raise the asset or the tenant class really quick. Like, you shifted from like these D class, C class tenants all the way to like, hey, this nice little flip or rehab. Now you can be getting, B quality tenants in there
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah. The thing went from meth production, prostitution, homelessness to now we rent it to long term, construction workers that are working up in Heber City, building the new ski resort, building all the resorts. And so,
Nice.
I got, 30 guys in there, 16 rooms full, paying me, 400 to $450 a week. And it's just pumping cash.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Have you able to turn around and refinance it and once it was stabilized?
We haven't yet because once we got it initially, the asset itself, I bought it to perform well. Then I kind of went into plans like, man, let's take the roof off and add another level. But the more we learned about Heber and the area and the ski resort, it's like we just decided to scrap it, man. So literally 2 days ago, I got our concept approved by the city to tear it down, build it ended up being 70 rooms, condo hotel, type of asset there that we can sell rooms off or we can keep them. We can do nightly rentals there. So
That's
I
cool.
think that's what we're going to do. It's going to take us a few years, but I think that's our plan.
Man, yeah, it's interesting. I love one thing I love about real estate is there's so many levels to it. Like you said, you could literally buy something and kind of keep it a little turnkey. Maybe do like I said, do a short little rehab, and then it's like, okay, it's functioning, it's cash flowing, it's good. And if that's all you have the imagination and the capital to do, okay, that's a good asset. But like you said, you can step back and think bigger. And if you have access to the capital and you can, have the time and bandwidth to figure out a bigger move, there's so much more that can be done, all with the same asset. You tear it down, build something new, and it's like, but you don't have to do that either. It's like it depends on where your life's at and what the market's
Yeah.
doing, and you just pivot with that. It's so flexible, you know what I mean, which is awesome.
Yeah. And I think something for your students is like, there's three reasons you buy real estate: either for cash flow, for appreciation, or for tax benefits. Those three. And where you're at in life, those three become different priorities. So for probably most
Yes.
of your students, you're probably trying to acquire cash flow, which is a noble cause, and it's important. When you can get to a point in your life where you have $5,000 to $10,000 of residual income coming in, your life changes. But once you have
Yeah.
that base, the truth is like $500 a month isn't going to change your life. $1,000 a month extra is not going to change your life much. Adding fives or tens will, but you kind of move into a different phase. Okay, I got maybe 10,000 bucks a month coming in comfortably. Well, you know, an extra 500 is I'm not going to really notice it, but like if I can
Right.
go knock out a appreciation play or a value add play and make 50 or make a quick 100, that's going to change my life. That's maybe 5 years of cash flow I can bang out in a year. Or maybe you are earning a lot, right? Like maybe Brody's earning, which he is, right? And it's like, man, I got to wipe out some tax liability. Well,
Mhm.
you're not looking for a property that's going to cash flow you $500 a month. You're looking to eliminate a $200,000 tax bill. And so your priorities shift. And so for a lot of you guys, it's like, yeah, if you're starting or you're at the beginning, build up your cash flow, but don't pass up on deals where maybe you can make a quick 50 or make a quick 100, or don't pass up on deals that can save you 50 on your federal tax liability. There's different
Yeah.
buckets and there's different areas where at some point you shift. And so for me, I've kind of shifted the last couple of years. It's like, hey, I don't need the extra 500 or the extra 1,000. I'm trying to knock out and boom, take down millions at a time.
Dude, which I love that concept. I remember like people always ask like, well, "What's a good deal? What's a good deal?" And my response is kind of like what you're saying. It's like, well, it's the one that helps you accomplish your goal.
Yeah.
And like you said, you need to know where you're at, and there'll be different phases in it. And it's like you don't want to get too distracted with trying to do everything else when you're here, when you're there, do that. When you're here, do that, but like you said, if there's a good deal to make some money on it, especially now that you know what to do with the money. I for a long time I encourage people like don't ever sell, don't ever sell, don't ever sell. Because that's what I felt like I should have done
Sure.
because I didn't know what to do with real estate because I was super amateur at it. And I just noticed every time I sold, I regretted it.
Yeah.
But once you know what to do with the money, like I said, if you can just go, oh, if I turn around and sell this and I make 2, 3 years worth of cash flow in 1 year, then I can leverage that and go buy something else, and now I'm just 2 or 3 years ahead,
Yeah.
and I'm not blowing that money. If you sell it to spend it, then, yeah, that's not gonna help, but if you turn that around, flip it to invest in something bigger, better, you've all of a sudden pushed fast forward on your portfolio and your investment career.
Yeah. Or you're gonna move up, man. Like same thing. I haven't sold a lot of stuff. I've done flips. I've done all sorts of things. I haven't rehab or refinanced a ton, but I have millions of dollars of assets, and like this project's kind of been like my big play. It's been a big chip. It's like, hey, man,
Sure.
if I can get this thing approved and it's going to be a big build, I can either sell the project, I can take on investors, or I can sell like 95% of my portfolio and take all that cash and build this, and like this would be a major home run. So you got to think about real estate as you're kind of like giving yourself chips, man. You're opening up doors, and to talk about kind of what I said earlier is like one of the biggest chips that you give yourself is time. And life happens, man. And I think a lot of people, when they talk about investing, they get scared. I
Mm,
put deals in front of guys that are so black and white. Hey, man, this is a great deal. I'm actually doing the deal. I'm buying this house. You should buy the one next to me. It's so black and white. It's so safe. It's so simple. And they don't do it because they're scared or they're getting in their own head. Like it's hard for folks to sit down and write a check sometimes. They just literally think themselves out of it. And so
yeah.
I was like, for you guys, man, like investing is cool, but sometimes it isn't actually cool enough. Like to have a lifestyle or to drive the cars or to be able to live in houses, it's not cool enough for some people, so they don't do it. And so, you know, you might need to scare yourself and be motivated by fear. And, that's kind of what happened to me, man. I had a wake up call 3 years ago where a relative died. And I
Mm,
saw, her husband take 2 years off of work and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and get her treatment for cancer. And, it ultimately didn't work. She ended up passing, but it scared me so much where I was like, shit, you know, if my wife got sick, could I take 2 years off of work and legitimately never work? Could I write, hundreds of thousands of dollars of checks for procedures, or would I have to say no? Like, if I got to that point and I had to say no, I couldn't be there because I had to work or I didn't have the money. Like, dude, that scared the hell out of me, man. So, you know, if you guys are struggling to put these deals together or to write these checks or to make the moves, like, the lifestyle might not be cool enough. Like, dude, you got to dig deep, and maybe fear does. And I operate a lot in fear sometimes because I'm scared to have to say no in the future. You know what I mean?
yeah, man. I think it can be a powerful motivator. You know what I mean? Obviously, you want to, harness it correctly. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where it doesn't make you freeze. And like I said, some people they
Sorry, I'm gonna
have
walk you.
fear, and so
Sorry,
they're.
go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, some people, they feel that fear and it makes them freeze and they don't take action. They don't buy that black and white deal, like you
Yeah.
said. But man, if you can leverage fear into being more active and being smarter and doing that due diligence, and that was a big thing that started me into making money was, yeah, I was scared of like some things financially. I was just afraid. I grew up poor. My family was poor. Everybody, I'm the youngest of five. Like no one had money, and I was just like seeing the struggles,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, I'm afraid of that happening, and it leveraged me to go start. I did sales as well and started making that money, and then putting into real estate for the same thing. And then I had a fear of like living a life that I hated, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to build a lifestyle that I can enjoy this life. So I think fear can be a super powerful motivator. I heard this quote once that said, like, all feelings are meant to be felt. And so it's like you don't need to run from it, like feel it and leverage it accordingly.
Yeah. I like that.
That's dope, man. So you've done quite a bit of stuff. Is there any specific project that you've done that kind of sticks out to you that you like to chat about? There's kind of a fun one or unique one, or even just a super basic one that was just like, man, this is so cool how this worked. Because I mean, you've done stuff from like say, to luxury Airbnbs and flips and new construction and you've done quite a bit. Is there any one that you like the most or one that you like hated the most? Like, man, I hated this kind of one. I got through it, but I'm not going to go back and do 10 more.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't I don't have any bad deals, man, or like up until this point, right? And anyone that's been in the game for the last 10 years, like you've won. So my biggest regret
Yeah.
is that I haven't done. Like I passed up on a lot of deals and I should have done them. But probably my one of my favorite ones is growing up, my grandpa, he always had a place up in Deer Valley. And that was kind of our spot. We went up there and we went skiing. We hung out there twice a year we'd vacation like as our whole family, cousins and grandparents,
Cool.
right? And he ended up losing that deal or losing that house kind of in a business deal. But my family and I, my immediate family, we hadn't had a family vacation in a long time, right? And that used to be our spot. And so one year we rented a place up in Bear Lake and we go there. And my wife was 8 months pregnant at the time. Day one, the AC breaks. It's packed. We're crammed in there. We had a great time, but it wasn't comfortable and it was expensive. And so we're like, man, at the time I was making some money. My other brother was playing in the NFL. He's making some money. My other brother was making some money. And so we left that house and I was like, guys, like, we're not doing this again, man. Like, we're not going to go pay $10,000 to rent a house for family vacation. Like, and we're not going to wait till we're 50 to own one of these things. Like, we're freaking doing it. So, on the way back, I was actually doing sales at the time in Louisiana. I'm sitting in the airport. I start going on, looking at Airbnbs, and I'm like, hey, how can I find an asset where, like, we can rent it, it can pay for itself, we can use it when we want. It's a phenomenal asset, you know. And once again, I just started doing the math, and I'm like, dude, this has to make sense. I had done nightly rentals on a smaller basis, a couple townhomes, a couple condos, but I'm looking at these luxury rentals, and I'm like, dude, like, we just paid $1,500 a month, and I know people are paying or $1,500 a night. I know folks are paying $2,000 a night. How do we get into that game? So
Yeah.
find this property up in Heber City. It's 40-acre ranch. It's I think it's 9,000 square feet. It's got 9 bedrooms and tennis courts. It's got a huge grass, huge lawn. If anyone's on this, you can look it up. It's called CobbleCreekRanch.com. And so,
I think I've stayed there.
are you serious?
I'm pretty sure I recognize that. I feel like I've been there.
Maybe. So I'm looking at this asset, and it's on the MLS, right? And it's got a couple weird things to it. It's going through a divorce. There happens to be a one of the neighbors has an easement that goes through like the front of the driveway, which is kind of weird, right? And so when you look at this, I'm saying, dude, this would be the perfect spot. We can live in it or we can use it. I know this thing would crush it on Airbnb. But why is it sitting? Like, why isn't this asset being purchased? Well, when you look at it from a rental, for $1 million, I think it was $1 million bucks, for $1 million in that area, it wasn't going to cash flow as a rental. So no investor is going to go buy it and stick a tenant in there for $4,000 a month. It wasn't a cash flow rental. Then you look at it and say, well, how about a homeowner? Once again, someone that's trying to buy their like forever home, they might not buy this asset when some neighbor has an easement to drive right across the front of it, right? They're not going to pay $1 million when, when that neighbor could sell and then there's 50 people living there and 20 cars. That's not appealing to them. So that's out. Okay, well then how can this be utilized? Well, as an Airbnb, man, this thing can really, really be utilized. Once again,
Yeah.
5 years ago, people weren't really doing it. There was maybe one big one in Heber City. And so I call this like disparity, right? Like you're looking at deals and you're saying, okay, as the homeowners, as an owner occupied, people are out of this market. This isn't appealing to them. As a rental, they're out of this market. Well, then who's in the market for this home? Maybe an Airbnb is, or maybe I can, do it the other way. And so you look for disparity and squeeze yourself into some of these deals. And that home as an Airbnb, I mean, it's produced probably, we're like $200,000 a year of rental income. We bought it for $1 million, and it might be worth 6 or 7 right now, right? And so
Yeah.
I look back and I say, man, so many people passed up on these deals because I was one of the only ones looking. Like I was looking for a family Airbnb that I wasn't going to live in. I don't care if the neighbor drives across my front yard. I'm only there 10 days a year and I'm never, barely going to see him, you know? So I,
Yeah, and the tenants, like these short-term tenants, they're not gonna care,
no,
right? It's like, okay, whatever. They're there for the weekend or the week. It's like
yeah.
they don't own it. They're not invested. They're like, whatever.
So I was a very small market of buyers. It sat for a long time. I don't think there was very many people like me looking, and so I was able to come in, acquire this property, which that worked for me, didn't work for all these other people, and
Mm-hmm.
that's been one of my best deals that we've done. And I think for you guys, sometimes you got to look at things. Like I hate when investors go and they post like something for sale and they say, "Oh, this is the cap rate," or they say, "This is the
Right.
rent." I'm like, dude, I don't care what the rent is because like your tenants are up in 6 months. Like if the rent's only $1,000, but I know the rent should be $1,500, it doesn't matter what the cap rate is. It matters what it should be. It matters what it could
Yeah.
be. Like I don't care. All you guys are passing up on this deal because the cap rate sucks. Well, it only sucks for 5 months. Then you boot out the tenants and you paint it, put an LVP, whatever, and then the cap rate's double that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or vice versa, right? You see like them listing like, "Oh, this would be the best asset in the world, a great rental
Yeah.
or a great flip," and their numbers are all like slanted, like ARV at this. And you're just like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
like
True.
like the bottom line, don't trust their numbers or their pitch for good or bad. Like you need to know the numbers. You need to be creative and look at it through your own eyes and trust that.
Yes. So I call that disparity. And
Mm.
it's kind of like, hey, I want something that the cap rate sucks, or I want something where the
Mhm.
rent sucks, or I want something that's used one way and it should be used another way, because I'm gonna get value out of the disparity. I'm gonna change the use, I'm gonna increase the use, or I'm gonna make it different.
Yeah, I love that. And what's cool is you might, if you're smart and you see it from the beginning, you pull the trigger and that can happen. But sometimes you'll get into a deal thinking it'll work one way, and then the disparity's there, and you're like, oh crap, this doesn't work. And then if you back up and pivot and reframe it, then you can shift and it can still be a good asset. That happened to me. I bought this condotel room. It was just like a hotel room up in Midway
Oh,
at
sweet.
the Zermatt
Yeah.
Resort, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, this will be an awesome short-term rental, right? It's a hotel room, like, they have management staff right there, like, this is a no-brainer." Like, and it was the cheapest thing I could find in Utah. Like,
Okay.
it was really cheap, and I was like, "Dude, I'm gonna get this thing." And so I ended up getting it, and I'm short-term renting it, and I'm getting destroyed. Like, they're taking 45% of the profits, and they have a monopoly on it. You have to use them to manage
Yeah.
it at the resort. They're taking 45%, which if that's not bad enough, they can't keep the thing filled. I'm like, 45%, hey, that blows. If you're filling it high enough where I'm cash flowing, whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't have to lift a finger. They couldn't keep the thing filled at all because they're doing this pool share of 20, 30 other single unit rooms like that. So I'm like,
And the
this is
secretary's probably
crazy.
being paid off to make sure theirs gets rent before yours.
For real, right? And so I'm just getting lambasted here. Not bad. I mean, it's kind of barely covering its own costs. Sometimes I'm losing, sometimes I make a couple hundred, but not where I didn't feel comfortable. It wasn't consistent, right?
Yeah.
And I turn around and I end up renting it as a long term to like the guy that works at the bakery, or I don't know, he's the head chef or somebody works up there. And he was stoked, just a single dude, to live in a hotel room virtually out at the resort. And
Wow.
he gets all the amenities, like it's a dope place to live. And then I'm like automatically cash flowing $500 a month. It's one of my highest cash returns in Utah, at a time where it's hard to find cash flow in Utah. And it was like, wait, who's gonna take the hotel room that should be short term rental and make it long term rental? Like that, there is a disparity there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think of that,
So they
and the
don't take
numbers
the
didn't
fee
make
on the long
sense.
term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they didn't make sense as a short term rental. I think that's why a lot of people didn't do
Yeah.
it. But I was actually originally gonna plan on living in it. Ended up not. Just said, "Oh, I'll just short term rent it." Didn't work. Pivoted again. Put someone in it long term, and
Nice.
it's been good. And so it's just funny seeing it from different perspectives at different times.
Yeah, that's a key point, man. I think that's big.
And then if you're wise and you can do that from the start, you can pick up properties that nobody else is buying that, look like trash or they just don't fit. Like I said, from the luxury Airbnb ranch house you got to the motel, again, people are passing it up because they're just like, this doesn't fit what I'm looking for. And you're looking and going, how can I make this fit?
Yeah, and sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes you have to learn that, like you, right? Like that room, I didn't know that, right? And I'm
Yeah.
sure, like, you probably didn't even know there's a market for that. Like, who the hell wants to live in a hotel, right? There's not even a kitchen, probably, or maybe there's a microwave. So,
For
like,
real, yeah, it's this teeny kitchenette thing, mini
yeah.
fridge. Like it didn't cross my mind to rent it out long
So,
term.
I've shopped those rooms, right? I've seen them. I've seen them on the MLS. I've seen people sell them on KSL. I almost did a seller finance deal, and like, I didn't
Mhm.
know, right? And so I passed up on a lot of those because, you know, yeah, I ran the math and I saw the rev share, and it's like I didn't know that there is a market for that. You do. So it's like, oh, well, shit, now you're going to be looking for these types of deals. And it's like, you're the 1% of people who know or who think that way. And now all of a sudden, when a deal pops up, 99 people, it checks out for them or it doesn't check out for them. So they're disqualified. Well, you are.
Mhm.
And those end up being some of your best ones.
Yeah, for sure, and especially when you're not doing it at scale, it's really easy because it's like, "Hey, if I did that 100 times in the same area, are there 100 people in that area that are gonna do that? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But if I just need 1, it's like, you'll find one.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that's not as complicated when you're not doing it at scale, It's like, are you gonna buy 20 luxury ranches with easements in front of them all in the same area?
No.
Maybe not, but are you gonna buy 1, maybe 2? It's like, yeah, you don't need it to work for everybody, you just need it to work for enough people,
No. And the cool part even about that ranch is like, you know, we have a plan to get rid of the easement. It's like, dude, we buy the property next to it and then we buy a lane and then we build the road for the guy. And it's like, okay, well, if I spend, you know, $70,000 to build another access for this guy, and then all of a sudden my access, I can put a gate on and it's totally private and it's on the base of this mountain, that might bump the thing $1 million. Well, would I want to spend 70 to increase my value $1 million? Yes. Okay. It's like, figure it out, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, like there might be an issue at start, but if you can think long term and find a game plan to get rid of that issue, then you can still move forward with it. I just
Yeah.
bought this property out on Oahu on the west side, and it has like a few heavy lifting items that need to be taken care of, like some foundational stuff and a roof thing. But it doesn't need to be done today. And so it's cool because it's like it'll cash flow, it'll self-support until there's enough equity that I can just pull that out and pay for that heavy lifting, but now I've got the asset.
Yeah.
As opposed to other people were looking at that going, "Ooh, I don't wanna touch that because of this issue or that issue." I'm like, I just figured out, like you said, I figured out a game plan to address those issues, and I was able to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think, I think the key to that is just the people listening is like, okay, look at everything, man. Like, dude, I'll stay up till 3 in the morning sometime on the MLS looking at, I set parameters like, okay, 10-bedroom house. Well, 10 bedrooms house or a steal because you get like
Mm,
the more bedrooms you get less and less per room. It's like, okay, show me a 10-bedroom house with a tennis court, a pool, and a hot tub, right? And in areas that allow Airbnb. It's like, okay, it can be old, it can be ghetto, the cabinets can be old. It's like these types of houses, disqualify a lot of people on the buying market, on the nightly rental market. Dude, people don't really care that much about the cabinets. They care about sleeping 40 people, or they care about sleeping 50
mhm.
people, or they care about having a pool, and they pay big, big money to sleep, to swim, and have amenities. And so, that's a disparity. That's a subset of a market where you can get a lot of value. You know, um, so
Yeah.
you want to right now. It's like there is deals to be had. Right, rates are high. Right, prices are coming down, but like where you really, really find deals is when you kind of squeeze yourselves into these markets and you kind of create your own deals.
Yeah, Brody has this thing he always says, he's like, "Find it, fund it, and force it." He's like, "Those are the 3 pieces
I
to
like
the
that.
deal." And when we're talking about the force it, right? Like, well, find a way to make it force it into a deal because you're thinking outside the box, you
Yes.
know? There's this idea I've had. I was consulting this summer sales company, and they were just a small, newer company, and they're spending a bunch of money at like a WeWork office, to have like office space, and they're thinking of going getting their own place because they were growing quite a bit. And I was like, dude, go buy something like you're talking about, like this luxury, like 10-bedroom home. I was like, go buy something like that. Use the money from the company to put down on it, and you'll be it was less than what they were spending on office space.
Yeah.
And they didn't have that big of a team. I was like, dude, there's this huge basement. Anyway, they could fit everything in there. They'd have this awesome asset that would be going up tons of value. They have way tons of control, and it'd be like the coolest, most unique thing for recruiting and all. It just hits so many paces that, but people don't think out of the box. I'm just like, dude, like just do that as
Yeah.
opposed to blowing it on this boring ass like office space that no one really cares about. That's not even yours.
Yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
like
And
that.
it's like, anyway, I think that was a way better way to find the disparity. And like I say, these big, especially these big homes, they are a hard sell because there's not a lot of people that are in that position to take advantage of it, especially if it's older. You know, a lot of times people want, if they're going to buy something that big for a primary, they want it to be like new and nice. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so
And
there's
I know,
stuff out there.
yeah. And Brody, I don't want to hijack your treasury, but I know Brody does, or you guys teach Airbnb, and I do it too. And like, just one quick plug on it is, bigger is safer. Like, the fact is, we look at Airbnb. There's just 10,000 condos. There's a million townhomes.
Mm,
I'm sitting in one of my rentals right now because my house is too crazy. I got kids, and this is like an office for me sometimes. But you know,
nice.
yeah, like that place I have in Heber, dude. I rent it to corporations, family reunions, weddings, retreats. People need to house 50 people, and when you want to go to Heber City, there's maybe three, and so that place is packed all the time. Prices aren't coming down. You know, Bigger is safer in that market. Bigger place, sleep more people, more amenities on site, pool, hot tub, fire pit. The more you can add on there, you're actually going to be safer because now there's only a handful of properties like that. So I always tell people, hey man, it's safer to spend $1 million than it is to spend 500,000. You'll rent,
Mm.
your rent will be higher, and you will rent it more often. And it kind of is reverse psychology, or it's screwed up to people, but it's like, hey, bigger, safer, it's less risky. There's more demand sometimes, and don't psych yourself out of going for those bigger deals because it's actually a lot less risky.
Man, I love that. I think there's so much power in that, and it's like it's so true because there's a couple things. One, like I always say, if there's intrinsic value in the asset, there's something unique and special about it.
Yeah.
It'll hold value and it has a place where other things won't. Like so there's nothing special about another townhome or another condo in a strip of townhomes and condos. Like say they're a dime a dozen. And so there's tons of competition and there's nothing unique about it. You buy something that big, there's virtually no competition and there's so many unique intrinsic things about it itself that you're not competing. And I love that. It's like don't compete. Just go find a way where you're the top. You're going to dominate because you're all there is, or there's two or three of you or whatever. It's like you can. There's plenty to go
Yeah.
around, and then you're not competing. You don't need to be the best of the best. You just need to be there because it's already in and of itself special.
Yeah, and that's why I only invest in Utah. Everything I own's here because, like, yeah, I might only have, 50 or 60 doors in the state, but it's worth a lot. But like, yeah, if I took that and went to, Florida or Tennessee or Oklahoma, it'd be hundreds of doors, right? But the thing is, I
For
know
sure.
the area, and I'm like, once again, I'm not just looking for cash flow stuff, man. I think assets are timeless. And I think if you know enough about an area, right? Like, since I've owned that place in Heber, the truth is I've never seen another one come up for sale. Like, you can't
Mm,
find 40 acres that backs up to a mountain, backs up to private BLM land, that's private, that's that big. I haven't seen another one happen in 5 years. And I have another deal like that where I live here in Vineyard. I lived here for a long time, and I have maybe 6 or 7 houses here. And like, there's a strip of homes that sit on Utah Lake, and they're incredible. The views are like amazing. And so at the time I was like
yeah.
buying my house, it's a brand new construction for like 500 grand. I'm seeing these houses that are half-acre lots that sit on Utah Lake, and the views are like insane. And I had never seen a house go up for sale like in 5 years. Well, they open up this new development, or this new lot. It's called James Bay. It's in Vineyard, and they're selling lots for like 400 grand, half-acre lots on the lake. Well, out of nowhere, a house pops up for sale. It's like 700 grand or something, built house, half-acre lot on Utah Lake. And I was like, dude, like, if you bought a lot for 400 grand, you can't build a 400, 500 square foot house for, like, you'd
No.
be in it way more than 700 grand, you right? And so
Yeah.
I'm doing the math, and I'm just like, hey, one, I would like to live here, and two, like how is nobody buying this? It ends up sitting for a minute. I make a deal with the guy. I buy it for I think I bought it for 550 2 years ago. Well, there hasn't been another one come up for sale until like a month ago, and it just sold for like 1.7 million. So
Jeez.
when the market's tanking and when stuff is sitting, right? Houses are on the market for 60, 80, 90 days right now. Well, this house pops up that's on the lake, half acre lot, and it sells in a couple days. Why? Because there's only 20 of them in all of Utah County. So, like in this market that we're coming into, stuff is going to sit, deals are going to be had, prices are coming down. Another way that you can really gain wealth is to look for these kind of timeless assets where it's like, hey,
Mm.
this house is on the market for 100 days, but this asset that's super unique, it's got a creek running in it, it's on a mountain or it's on a lake or it's, big or it's got all this stuff. Dude, those things are still selling, man. There's a lot of money out there, right? And the assets are timeless, I think. And so, I like Utah because I know the areas, I know the cities, I know the deals. I know there's like 4 or 5 houses I have just in my mind where it's like, hey, if this thing ever comes up for sale, I'm buying it because I've never seen it for sale. Obviously the price is going to matter, but I mean, not really because I've been waiting for 5, 10 years to see it. You know what I mean?
Dude, I love that. It's funny. I was just listening to this Rob Dyrdek podcast, and he said the exact same thing. He had this home in like this gated community in Beverly Hills. There was only like 100 homes or something, and it was just like he was able to either buy it or sell it. It was like it happened like so quick, like so, when everything else is sitting there and everybody's like freezing. These we're talking tens of millions of dollars for these homes. It's kind of like a higher asset. But when they're never available,
Yeah.
it's such a scarcity. The value is just like it's gonna sell, if you wanted to sell it, because there's no other options for the person that wants that thing. You
Yes.
know what I mean? And again, you don't need 1,000 people. You don't need 10 million people that want that thing. If there's only two or three available, all you need is two or three people,
Yeah.
you know? And when there's 15 or 20 people that want it, that's a lot of urgent, need for that one person to get you because you're in a really powerful position. Um, let's pivot a little bit. How do you fund a lot of this stuff though? Because when you're talking bigger deals, obviously you can go make some active income and put it into it, and that's an awesome option that I strongly encourage a lot of people when they're starting. Like, just go make some money and put it into real estate.
Yeah.
But is that kind of what you've done, or what's been some of the options you've had to fund some of these more bigger picture deals like we're talking about?
You know, I, yeah, I've used a lot of my cash, right? And that's, I earned a lot and I saved a lot. And like when I say I went to zero, like I did, man. Like I $100,000 checks, $200,000 checks, $300,000 checks. Like I went to zero, 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 and I put it all in, right?
Yeah.
But some things too, I took partners on, and I haven't had a lot of partners, but when I do, I use look, I've been blessed to have good family. I partnered with my brothers, and they'd been, successful, and so I'd kind of find them the deals, and those deals have been great for me because there's been extremely high trust, right? Where I can just right now I could send a text to my brother and he could wire me 200 grand in a second. There's no paperwork, there's no contracts. It's just, hey man, this is a
Yeah.
good deal. We need to move fast, quick. Someone else is going to get it. There's very, very high trust there. So I think partners are important. I've been blessed by that. And the other way is I actually, starting off, I did a lot of seller finance deals, which I think in this market are huge, man. This is the
Mm.
greatest. I think this is the greatest opportunity for seller financing that we might ever see, because there's a huge disparity upon what people are paying and upon what the market rates are. So
Yeah.
I did probably 3 or 4 seller finance deals, and this was 6 years ago, where I was able to get in, um, put money down, acquire the asset, and within my balloon of 2, 3 years, refinance out of it. Because a lot of your guys, just being honest, it isn't so much the capital. Like you're gonna have a hard time financing projects, either by yourself or with your wife or with partners. Like just getting loans sucks, man.
Yeah.
So
It's a pain, right?
yes, and so creative financing, especially right now, dude. I would be going so hard on seller finance deals. I think it is the biggest opportunity right now.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Like say the difference between when people just from a few years ago have interest rates at 2 or 3%, to now it's 6, 7,
Yeah.
8%. Like I said, that there's right disparity there, right? It's like, man, that is a big gap that you can solve by doing seller financing, you
Yeah,
know?
so here's my advice. Go find somebody who's bought the house within 1 to 2 years, because the truth is they're not going to have a ton of equity. Seller finance is hard to do when someone has like hundreds of thousands of equity, because you have to come
Right.
up with that cash. So ideally you find someone that's selling an asset for 500 grand, but they probably owe 450 on it, right? Well, that 450 that they have is on like a 3% mortgage. So you go to
Mhm.
them and you're like, hey man, if you sell this house, you're going to make 50 grand, but this beautiful, amazing 30-year fixed mortgage of 3% is going to be gone forever, and we might not ever see it again. So, Mr. Customer, what I'm going to do is this: I'll give you the 50 that you would make regardless. I'd actually give you more. I'll give you 60. Shit, I'll give you 65, or I'll overpay for this thing, right?
Mhm.
But it's going to be subject to, or I'm going to keep your existing financing in place. Anyone that's bought within the last year or year and a half, especially if they bought at the peak, you know, they're probably even, or they might even be underwater a little bit.
Yeah, they said like 8% of people that bought in the past year are like underwater already, because it's
Yes.
just shifted. Not a ton, but they're not it's not going up like it was.
Yeah. So once again, the price becomes a little bit, I'm not going to say it's irrelevant, but, I would gladly overpay something by 20 or 25 grand if
Mhm.
it meant that I could assume their financing at 3%, because that alone is going to save me maybe 5 to 6 or 700 bucks a month. So in the scheme of things, it's like, well, it's not that big of a deal. And I didn't even know this till 2 days ago. FHA loans and VA loans, you can legitimately assume, like you can actually assume the mortgage legally.
Oh,
Anything
really? You
else, you
don't
got
even
to,
have to just do a sub two. You can actually truly assume the loan?
yeah, it's like a couple pieces of paper, run the credit, assume that actual mortgage.
No way.
Yeah, I've heard that from 3 mortgage brokers now. I didn't even know that. So, I mean, I could be wrong, but you guys double check it.
Eh, I
Anything
like
else,
that.
obviously, you do subject to, and there's a bunch of information you can learn about that. But I think that's a massive, massive opportunity right now.
Man, that's so cool. This has been exciting, Drew. I can't believe we've already been about an hour in. That we'll definitely need to have you come back on down the road because this has been super cool. For anybody that just listened to this, I really encourage you to go back and listen again. I feel like we just hit a lot of powerful points in a row. I want to go back and listen to it again. And I feel like it's cool. A lot of the stuff you're doing is a little different than a lot of the story of other people. And I like to say the viewing it from another perspective, I think is so powerful. So, dude, thanks so much for your time.
Of
I'm
course,
sure
man.
there's a lot more golden nuggets we could dig out if we just kept talking. But it's the holidays. Let's go be with your family for Christmas. But I do have a couple in-out questions I want
Sure.
to shoot past you before we roll out. Is there anything else you wanted to kind of share? Any last thoughts before I do those?
I don't think so, man. I think the last thing I would say is this: like, get with your wife, sit down, start backwards, man. Go start 15 years from now. Where do you want to be? What kind of lifestyle you want to have? What kind of cars you want to be driving? What kind of charities you want to give to? What kind of impact you want to have? What kind of food do you want to eat? What kind of schools do you want your kids to be attending? What kind of neighbors do you want to have, right? Start there, 15 years ahead, right? 20 years ahead, 10 years ahead, and then go
Mm,
back. Hey, man, okay, you and your wife or your partner or whoever, you got to be on that same page, man. I've seen a lot of this stuff. People don't do it because the husband or the wife is trying to get to the top and the partner's trying to be basic, right? That's going to
yeah.
be a problem. And so I was able to go to zero and write big checks and make big moves because my wife and I are on board. Like, we want to be at the same place. So we started there, we defined it very clearly, and then we work backwards. Everything we do is to fulfill that type of situation. And that's why for me, the deal doesn't matter. What matters is winning. Winning is what matters. Being where I want to be at matters. And it doesn't matter how I get there. It doesn't matter what the path is. All that matters is, hey, does this deal help me get to where we want to be at? Yes. Okay, let's do it.
Man, I love that. And what better time of year to do that? Like I love goal setting. I love New Year's. It's like my favorite holiday. I always say New Year's Eve is my favorite holiday. And I don't mean because I'm gonna go out and pop champagne and go to a
Yeah.
party. Like I love to set the goals for a new year. I know resolutions aren't cool anymore or whatever, but man, I think it's a powerful time to say carve out that time to sit down and really game plan your next 10 years and break it down
Yes.
to what you need to be doing this year and in January. and in February.
Yes.
So that's powerful, man. That is super good. I appreciate it. We'll bust through these in-doubt questions. We'll let you roll. All right. So next question, first question, non-real estate related bucket list item you're excited to check off next.
I would say, that's a good question, man. Probably house on the beach in Southern California. Oh, not real estate related?
Non-real estate
Oh,
related. I mean, if that's a primary, that counts. I just don't want it to be a real estate project, but we probably put those together.
Man, I did a lot of stuff this year, man. So like, I was just thinking about this. Probably
What's one you checked off this year that you were stoked on that you already did?
One I checked off this year was I actually joined like a men's mastermind group that was expensive, but I got so much fulfillment and growth from that, and it was a big check. And so I had never done that, never joined these types of groups. I kind of rolled solo, so you know that was a
Yeah.
big one for me. And I think if just one quick thing for the group too, it's like, hey, there's a lot of things that don't have an ROI dollar wise, and like even this group, if you don't ever do a deal out of this thing, but you meet a friend or meet somebody and you build a relationship, don't make decisions strictly off ROI, because there's a lot of intrinsic things that are hard to value, and they're way more valuable than money.
That's cool. That's powerful. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of those pop up lately, and I've been curious about them. So that's cool to hear that it's been such a good experience for you. I love it, man. All right. So question number 2: what book are you currently reading?
Currently, I just started for the second time Ed Milet, The Power of One More. The
Nice.
truth is, I don't read a lot of books, man. Like I read a lot of articles, man. I read the news all day long. I consume data and information. So, I think too many people read too many books. And so I'm not a big book guy, but I read all day, every day. I mean, current events, world market trends. I think don't get stuck too much in books. It can hang you up. Read the news all day, every single day, and you need to be ahead of the puck, man. Sometimes, so books are important.
What
In this game, you need to be 5 steps ahead as well.
I love that. What sources do you go to for that kind of information?
I mean, like
Because
Apple.
there's obviously so much trash out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so like Apple News, I'm a subscribed to everything, Wall Street Journal, but what's kind of crazy, but I spend a lot of time on like even Instagram, where I follow people, man. Like St. George, I had a huge win last year where I was able to, buy a vacation rental up in Coral Canyon with a pool on the golf course, and I got it for 700 grand, and it's now worth probably 2 million. And that's just kind of one of those deals where like you start to see, dude, everyone's going to St. George, man. Like people are buying there, they're
Mm-hmm.
moving there, they're going on vacation there. Like I'm seeing a lot of folks go here who weren't going there in the past. Like I need to pick up an asset here, and then the market goes insane. That type of stuff, it's like, dude, you ain't getting that from a book, man. You're getting that from social media. You're seeing who's going to these places and why are they going there, and would they go back.
That's cool. I like that. I like that. All right, last question, man. If you could send a text message to the world, everybody's phone blows up right now, and oh, Drew's texting me. What's that gonna say?
That's going to say this, man. Go be present, love your wife, love your kids, and I'm going to say this, that none of this stuff matters, bro. All the shit we're talking about, dude, it don't matter, because the truth is you'd give it all away in 2 seconds if it meant to take care of your family member. So don't mess up your relationships or your family to go earn money or to go do deals, because none of this stuff matters, man. You would give it all away in a second to actually save your relationship. I kind of got put in that situation a year ago, just being honest. And so I tell people this, man: pull back, slow down, make sure your life's in order, man. Make sure your wife's happy. Make sure you know how to be present with your kids. You know how to live your life. Don't be stepping over your relationships to go earn a buck, because the truth is, if you lost your whole family, and you had money, you'd give it all away to have it back.
There
That's
we
more
go,
of a, that'd
man.
be an audio message. That wouldn't be a text.
Yeah, yeah, send in an audio. Let's hear the passion. That we really appreciate you opening up and sharing that, man. I think that's the best advice you could give. So that's the message to the world. I appreciate it, man. Well, we'll let you roll. Without further ado, this is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to go to zero on assets and remember what's important.
Thank you. Appreciate it. See you guys.